Pacote 2 confirmado. Título: Horner targets F1 return, FIA timing suspicious. Fórmula D: Thumb text, convenient, julgamento e instituição. Seguindo para a etapa 2. Roteiro TTS completo. Roteiro TTS. He said he needs skin in the game. And 3 months later, the man who ran Red Bull for 2 decades is quietly building something the entire paddock is pretending not to notice. This isn't a comeback story. This is a timing story because while everyone's been watching Christian Horner get rejected, by Alpine, then by BYD, nobody's been asking the more uncomfortable question. Why is he now aiming for a specific year, not whenever a seat opens up, not whenever a team wants him? A specific year, tied to a specific regulation change that the FIA president has been quietly steering toward for months. Let's go back to the start, because the order of events here matters more than the events themselves. Horner leaves Red Bull after 20 years, not a quiet exit, the kind of departure that leaves a mark on an organization, the kind that makes rivals watch closely to see where he lands next, because a man with that much institutional knowledge doesn't just disappear from the sport. The first stop was Alpine. On paper, it made sense. A French constructor looking for direction, an executive looking for a project. Sources close to the talks describe Horner exploring a stake in the team, not just a technical role, an ownership position. That's not someone looking for a paycheck. That's someone looking for control. And then it fell apart. Not because of Horner, not because of Alpine's technical staff or their drivers or their car. It fell apart because Renault, the parent company sitting above Alpine, vetoed it. A decision made in a boardroom that has nothing to do with lap times, made by executives who may have never watched a race weekend from the pit wall. Here's the first pattern worth naming. Horner isn't being rejected by the sport. He's being rejected by the people who sit above the sport. The finance departments, the parent companies, the ones who look at reputational risk on a spreadsheet, not on a starting grid. Then came BYD. Think about what that represents for a second. The largest electric vehicle manufacturer on the planet, based in Shenzhen, sitting on cash reserves most F1 teams would need 3 seasons to generate. A company that wants exactly what Formula One wants back. A foothold in the Chinese market that neither side has managed to fully unlock. On paper, Horner leading a BYD entry into F1 wasn't just plausible, it was the kind of deal that would have reshaped the entire competitive landscape of the sport. And it collapsed too. Not through some leaked internal memo, not through anonymous sources. Stella Lee, BYD's own executive vice president, said it herself publicly that the company has no intention of exploring Formula One in the immediate future. Read that sentence again. Not, we're still considering it, not, no comment. A direct on-record statement, shutting the door in Horner's face days after he'd walked back into the paddock for the first time since his exit. At Silverstone, no less. Greeting fans outside the building he used to run. That's not a coincidence of timing. That's a message. So here's where it gets interesting. According to a recent report from F1 Insider, talks with BYD have stalled. And Horner isn't waiting around for the next offer to walk through the door. He's reportedly working on his own entry, his own team, not joining an existing constructor. Building one from the ground up, time to launch at the start of Formula One's next regulatory cycle. And that's the detail nobody's connecting yet. Because at the exact same moment, Horner is positioning himself for a new era entry, FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem is targeting that same window, the year 2030 or 2031 at the very latest, to tear up the current turbo-hybrid engine formula entirely and bring back louder, simpler V8 power units running on sustainable fuel. 2 men, 2 completely different roles, one sitting at the top of the sport's governing body, the other trying to fight his way back into it, and both of them are circling the exact same calendar date. Is that convenient? Or is that the plan? Think about what a regulation reset actually does to a grid. It doesn't just change engines, it resets the competitive order. Teams that have spent a decade optimizing turbo hybrid systems suddenly have to start from zero. Manufacturers who've been priced out by the complexity and cost of the current formula suddenly have a much cheaper, much simpler entry point. A louder, more straightforward V8 power unit isn't just nostalgia bait for fans. It's an open door for anyone with capital and ambition to walk through without 20 years of technical debt standing in their way. And who benefits most from an open door? Someone who's spent 2 years being told no by every existing team. Someone who doesn't need Alpine's blessing or BYD's cash if the entire cost of entry just dropped. This is the part of the story that doesn't get said out loud because it's not a quote anyone's given to a reporter, it's a pattern. Horner isn't just waiting for a seat to open up on the current grid, he's positioning himself for the moment the entire grid gets rebuilt and building his own operation to walk in the front door instead of begging for a side one. Now, here's where you have to separate ambition from certainty. Nothing here confirms Horner and the FIA are coordinating on this. There's no leaked call, no joint statement, no smoking gun linking Ben Sulayem's regulatory push directly to Horner's personal timeline. That has to stay in the category of pattern, not proof, until something more concrete surfaces. But ask yourself this. Since leaving Red Bull, Horner has been explicit, repeatedly, about wanting skin in the game. Not a consulting role, not an advisory seat, ownership, control, the kind of position that only really exists in one of two places, buying into an existing team, which he's already tried and failed to do twice, or building a new one from the regulatory ground floor, which just happens to be opening at the exact moment he's aiming for. You don't need a conspiracy to explain that. You just need to notice that ambitious people don't wait for doors to open. They watch for the moment the walls come down entirely, and they're already standing there when it happens. There's also a wrinkle worth sitting with. Horner has reportedly been in contact with the majority of the grid's current occupants since his exit, testing the waters on other potential roles. And yet, none of those conversations has produced anything close to a deal. Not one. That's not bad luck twice. That's a pattern of an industry that isn't ready to let him back in through the front door of an existing team, which makes the timing of his own new entry ambitions look less like patience and more like a calculated retreat to the one path where nobody else gets to say no. So where does that leave things? Horner spent this month walking back into Silverstone as a visitor, not an employee. Stella Lee spent this month closing a door he'd only just tried to open. And Mohammed Ben Sulayem spent this month continuing to push toward a V8 future that could reshape who's even capable of entering this sport. 3 separate stories on paper. One story if you follow the calendar, the next real test of this comes at the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend, where paddock conversations tend to move faster than press releases, and where any further movement on Horner's plans, or any comment from a current team boss about a Horner-led entry, would be the first real confirmation that this isn't just a man waiting out the clock. It's a man building toward a specific date, in a sport that's rebuilding around that exact same date, convenient, or calculated. You decide which word fits better. If this is the kind of pattern you want us digging into before anyone else connects the dots, hit subscribe, because we're not done watching this timeline. Drop a comment telling us whether you think Horner and the FIA's V8 reset are connected, or whether this is just coincidence dressed up as a story. Like this video if you want more of these behind-the-scenes reads instead of just race results. And if you want to see exactly how a regulation reset could open the door for new constructors, there's a video on that right here. Until the next one.